Welcome back to Beyond Small Talk. I'm your host, Chris. Currently, I'm recording this podcast on what seems like a retro couch down in my basement. And I wanted to share with you just some of the thoughts that I had this week. But before I get into that, I'd heard another content creator, and I thought it was just, you know, and it really resonated with me. And so he was saying that how posting, content, whether it's, social media or, the podcast, it's really like exposure therapy. And so that really resonated with me because, I use TikTok and the podcast as that, outlet as well to not only, articulate my thoughts, but just to kind of get stuff off my chest sometimes. But nevertheless, here's some of the thoughts that I had this week that I kind of wanted to share with you. So the first one was the material items and experiences. I no longer chase shiny objects like I once did. I mean, I'm in my early 30s now, 32. So like in my 20s, I always wanted the fancy car, the fancy house, the go into, name whatever store and you had to have it. But those things they don't really resonate with me anymore. I don't know if it's where I'm getting older or just exposing myself to different things out in the world, different conferences, people learning different things. But also, I feel like we put too much emphasis and focus on the object. But once we get it and the feelingness of the happy, or once we received it, it kind of fades. So we're in that constant cycle of trying to replace the shiny object. That's not to discredit the things that I have. I'm very grateful for all the things that I have. I just, that's not the thing that really draws me currently. I'm kind of wanting to explore more of the world and get to know more people. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but just a thought. Another thought that I had this week was the constant need for or to feel in the silence. I feel like we struggle to just be present, take in the moment. We use Netflix, whatever. We useless banter simply because we don't know how to deal and just be present with the silence in our thoughts. We have to constantly be doing something in order, our brain has to constantly be going because if we do, we have to slow down. Once we slow down, we then are, we're there with our thoughts, and I think that scares a lot of us. So I challenge you, if you're out there or listening, this coming week, just kind of take in that moment. Try not to fill in the silence, kind of embrace it. You don't have to turn on Netflix so quick. You don't have to blurt out something just to fill the silence. Sometimes silence is a good thing. That's not to say don't respond if somebody's speaking to you, but definitely don't feel like that you have to have the need to fill the silence constantly, because I think that's keeping our mind and our brain constantly going so we can't catch up just to kind of be present. I think that is a undervalued skill, especially with like the social media driven age that we live in. And another thought that I had this week, because we all have so many, but the fear of failure. And I think the fear that most people have is the perception of what failure is. Everybody thinks that failure is the end all be all, that if you fail, that you quit, you can't keep going. But to me, failure is more so like a catalyst to success. You kind of see the benchmarks, kind of where you are, what you need to work on. I mean, it's a great way to see it's how you get better. Failure isn't a bad thing, even though there's a stigma around the word failure. You can fail forward. There has to be steps or progression to growth. You're gonna fail. You're gonna fail every day, but that's how like I said, that's how you grow. That's how we learn. You're not just going to get it right the very first try. So I think that's why it's so important that you learn from your failures, and that's what kind of enables you to keep going and to get better. I mean, if done properly, you can use your failures as stepping stones in order to get to where you want to be or the successes that you deem. I know that's kind of a lot of information in a short amount of time, but that was just some of the thoughts that I had this past week. You know, it kind of varies. It kind of goes all over the place at times. But yeah, coming up the next week and the following week, we're going to get back into having some guests on the podcast. A returning guest on the podcast from earlier will be Shane Vance. He'll be back on next week. And then Astra Cole, who does a lot of work, to my understanding, with like the meaning of the body language and the functions of the body and how we carry that with us. But really excited to bring both of those guests back on the podcast. Well, Shane back on and Astra on for the first time, and sit down with them and learn from them and share that with you all. And I also forgot to say it during the beginning of the episode, but also happy 4th of July. I know it's July 5th now, which is Sunday, so happy 4th weekend. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. We'll have Shane on the podcast and Astra coming up, and hopefully some other guests that we can learn from and take something from. Thank you so much for tuning in.